someone who is actually innocent, like Brendan Dassey. When you have an innocent person sentenced to life behind prison, that's exactly the situation that the clemency power was tailor-made to address. This is a case that federal judges have called a profound miscarriage of justice, and we're calling on Governor Evers to remedy that injustice today.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Wow, you mean you're there?
I clicked on something. Okay, so
And you stopped it.
Yeah, because I realized, oh wait, I'm on a live. Okay, so welcome everybody. Welcome to Brendan Talks. I'm actually really excited today what we're going to be going over. But before I get there, I'm sorry, Linda. Hi, Linda.
Hi.
I'm just so excited.
Yeah, I am too. This guy is really good.
Yeah, I was just telling Linda before we went live. This guy is like the MVP of like wrongful convictions and interrogations and stuff like that. We're going to be going over Dr. Richard Leo's cross-examination during Brendan's 2010
Hi, Maggie.
Post-conviction hearing. Yeah, hi Maggie, welcome. It is an open panel. Excuse me, I'm still getting over a cold, so I'm still congested.
Yeah, you should pin
but
that.
It's an open panel. I can't. You have to.
Oh, okay. Well, let me quick do that, okay?
Yeah.
You can talk. Keep talking.
Yeah,
I'll pin it. I'm sorry, I forgot.
No, you're fine. So if you guys, it is an open panel, so you guys want to jump on and give your opinions or thoughts or whatever about what we go over today. Today is going to be pretty basic because we're only going to be doing like an hour and a half of this. But like the first half is basically how it goes is that when you want to insert somebody as an expert witness into any kind of court proceeding, you have to qualify that person to be an expert witness, and by doing that is that you have to basically introduce them in all that they do and blah blah blah, and then the judge
research
yeah. So the judge will then you will say, I would like to insert this person as a expert witness, and then the judge will say yay or nay. So that's
right,
basically
because there's a difference. There's a difference between an expert witness and a witness, right? You know, because they have doctors on there that say they're a witness because they're not an expert in that particular field.
Right.
So
I also
to put that out there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I also want to say that if you guys, this is what I'm going to be reading from. I put in the description below the link to Stephen Avery case files.com. I tried to find this on FilePlay, and I couldn't find it on FilePlay, so I don't know if they have the post-conviction stuff. I'm sure they do on their website.
They do.
I just couldn't find it quick enough, so I went to where I knew exactly where it was. But if you guys want to go to either FilePlay or the website I provided, you could also follow along and read.
Right, I put it in chat.
Okay, thank you. Now, the rules are as follow. I'm going to read, and if you want to say something, just speak up and I'll pause.
You got it. I know how the rules are. And do I follow them? Not really, but I'll try.
All right, let me
go right ahead. Come on,
let me make this bigger. How does that look on the screen? Much better. Okay. So, like I said, this guy is like the MVP of false confessions, wrongful convictions. So
he's spoke on many podcasts before.
He has a book. He's written papers. Yeah. He's written all sorts of stuff. He's just like really awesome dude. So I'm excited to go over this guy. And he actually has a book that next payday I'm going to buy.
Cool.
About wrongful
I don't read
convictions.
much. I'm not a book reader, but his probably would be well worth it because he breaks down confessions really good. I mean, he broke down Brendan's excellent.
Yes, he did. So that's what, yeah. All right. So let us continue. So we go all the way down here. This is basically, oh wait, hold on. Dr. Richard Leo is 87. So then we go over here, 87. Here we go. So, Richard Leo calling a witness, blah, 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 clerk, examination. So like I said, this first part is where he's going to be going over his expertise. So I'm going to skip some of this text because it's just legal talk that we don't really, he's asking him to look at some exhibits, which is basically his resume and his list of things that he has done. Oh, this is my curriculum, see, which is a fancy word for resume. So that's what those exhibits are. And also this is what he currently does at the time in 2010. And I think he still works for the college in San Francisco.
He's still a professor.
Yep, he's still a professor. So his regular teaching responsibilities include criminal law, criminal procedure, a seminar on wrongful convictions, which I would love to sit in on that one.
Oh, I'd love to sit in a class of his.
Yeah. And then the last two of which I'm teaching this semester. So, and that was back in 2010 though. So I don't know if he's still doing that. I would like to think he still is. And then down here, okay, would it be fair to say concerning your testimony here today, the most relevant experience that you have and training that you have, expertise is the social psychology of police interrogations and how psychological interrogation tactics can produce coercion and unreliable confessions. So that's Drizzen asking him that question, and his answer is yes. So he's like, okay, so break down these terms. So I'm going to be reading this because I think this is important. When you say social psychology or of police interrogations, what do you mean? What I mean is the interrogation is a process. Now, social psychologists are interested. It's a psychological process. Social psychologists are interested in generally how people's perceptions are influenced or shaped by those around them and how and why they decide to do what they do and act the way they act. So social psychologists study the interrogation process, is interested in how the influence in interrogation causes suspects to behave the way they do, namely usually stop denying and ultimately start admitting, which is what Brendan did, right?
Right.
What is it about the environment of interrogation? What is it about the techniques of interrogation which police are trying to use? What is it about the process that causes a suspect to change his or her behavior and ultimately stop denying and start admitting to something that is against their self-interest and can end them in prison for many years? That's a good explanation, right? So then he asks, you mentioned the words psychological interrogation tactics. What do you mean by those words? So then he says, so going back to 1940s, police have developed a psychology, sorry, these words, psychology of interrogation. They have developed training manuals on how to break suspects down and get confessions. Police realize this is the premise of their manuals and their training that most people are not going to make admissions at the beginning of an interrogation. And so you got to use techniques or methods to break down their resistance and move them from denial to admission. And so these, when I say psychological techniques, I mean techniques that are written in their manuals that they train interrogators, detectives to use during interrogation. That's social scientists like myself and many others, have studied for a long time. All right. So then he asks him, psychological coercion, what do you mean by those terms? And then he breaks it down again. Well, I mean one of two things. Either techniques that are recognized in the psychological community as being inherently coercive because of their very nature, they are likely to overwhelm or overbear somebody. Techniques like deprivations, physical or psychological deprivations. But more commonly, deprivations. But more commonly, threats or promises, whether implied or expressed. So certain techniques
Alice is backstage.
Oh, is she?
Yes.
Thank you. Sorry, I'm over here reading.
I know you can't see, so that's why I'm.
I couldn't see.
Eyes to the chat.
Hi, Alice.
Hello.
Hey, Alice.
Let me in. I'm sitting back.
For Christ's sake, yeah, let her in. How you doing, sweetie?
How are you doing, Alice?
Yeah, I'm doing good, thanks. How are you?
We're doing good.
We're doing good. Glad to have you back on the panel here.
Yeah, it's nice to be back on the panel. We haven't done this for a while.
Oh, a long time.
That's why I was really excited to get this going again on Sunday. So
fantastic.
Yep, you'll be hearing her say at foul play. Well, I'll be going on Brendan Talks on Sunday. I used to love that. Okay, continue. I'm sorry.
So where did I leave off of? More commonly, threats and premises.
The deprivations.
Whether implied or expressed, so certain techniques are inherently psychologically coercive. And then a broader view of psychological coercion, because ultimately psychological coercion is about breaking down someone's will to the point where they will do or say anything that they're directed to do. Where am I? Okay. Looking communicatively at the interrogation process, not just at a particular technique, and analyzing whether or not interrogation process can cause the suspect to perceive that they had no choice but to do what they are directed or told to do. That perception of no choice is the result of psychological coercion. Interesting, right?
Yeah.
And then he asks him, we're going to be using it throughout the term, unreliable confession. What do you mean by unreliable confession? And then he defines it as, what I mean by an unreliable confession is a confession that does not fit the evidence. That's not corroborated. Corroborated.
There you go. Corroborated.
That there is no reason to believe is accurate. I read much better in my head, guys. Just want you all to know that.
I can read in my head, but I can't read. Yeah. Out loud, man. I tried that, and it's embarrassing.
Yeah. I have no name, so it doesn't embarrass me. But I'm still like, it's in my head. Everything is coming out clear. Okay. Yes, I have done. Okay, so he asked him if he's done research himself, and of course he has. Yes, I've done extensive research on this topic. Was the topic of your doctoral dissertation? Although my doctoral dissertation was really a study of routine but historical interrogation practices in the 20th century in America, as well as routine interrogations in the 90s. Social psychology of interrogation was after my doctoral dissertation. Anyway, so I kind of like skipped in the highlighting, and I just wanted to hit these key points just to let you guys know exactly where he worked at the Oakland Police Department in Northern California, where he was sitting in for 9 months in live interrogations. Live interrogations as they occurred. So he did 122 interrogations at that time, which is pretty impressive in 9 months. And And then he did 30 fully videotaped interrogations, which was less common at the time because I believe he made a comment this was in the 90s, right?
Right.
So 1982, or so 182 interrogations in total he observed live or by recording for his research on false confessions and interrogations. So then there's a bunch of other questions about the early 90s and stuff like that that were interesting, but I didn't highlight.
Well, he talks about it becoming an expert there, here, right here, that part of expert.
Yeah, that's what I was just, so we're clear, when you observe these interrogations, you were actually in the room or were monitoring them from another location. He said, I was in the room. And how he didn't obstruct or the interrogation, and it was up to the interrogator if he could sit in the room or not, and even being introduced. Now, after your doctoral dissertation, have you continued to study research on social psychology of police interrogations? And he said, yes, he does that. This is part of the job, basically. And then he said he's estimated that I've studied probably 3,000 or more interrogations at this point. So this was in 2010. So I'm sure that's more than doubled between now and then. Let's see. So I skipped the next page. Not that it isn't interesting, but I kind of wanted to only hit the key points and all this stuff. So the next thing I highlighted was he asked, you obviously analyze actual cases of false confessions, and he's correct. So I just want to make clear, when he was talking about sitting in interrogations and all that, some of those weren't considered quote-unquote false confessions. Those were just interrogations. So this is where he's saying that I've actually analyzed actual cases of confirmed false confessions at this point. Hey, Carol.
Hey, Carol.
So
that's okay.
So you've done documentary analysis of case files, and he says yes. And down to 15. Aside from your work, how large would you say is the body of work dealing with the social psychology of police interrogations? And he said, aside from, oh, it's right here. I would say at this point, the body is quite large. There are hundreds of articles, dozens of books, edited books and books. It's quite extensive, going back many years. And then down here, he asked him, do all these studies in this body of work discuss the risks that attend to psychological coercive interrogations? And he says much of it does, yes. And then he said, what are those risks? And then he answers, well, the risks would be that somebody could be induced through psychological interrogation techniques or coerced into giving an involuntary statement, a statement against their will. And then they could be induced or coerced into giving a false statement, a false confession in particular. And that these kinds of statements and admissions and confessions, if involuntary and or false, could lead to a wrongful conviction of the innocent and perhaps even over conviction of the guilty. So those are the risks of psychological interrogation.
And that's what Brendan was, psychologically.
Yeah, he was
rehearsed. So that's the main point of this, is that because of Brendan's social abilities or lack of, and the position that the detectives placed him in, the environment, and the way they talked to him, made all that come out into a false confession.
Yeah.
Right.
So he asks about unreliable confessions, which are a part of all of this, which is, like he said, there is a difference between a false statement, a false confession, and false admissions. Like there's different kinds of it, and leading.
Yeah.
So he's gonna start asking him his studies and unreliable. So he actually talked about, which I, the same kind of studies that he did in the early 90s and stuff like that. So he knows his shit.
The guy has done, I mean, look, 3,000 interrogations, not all of them being false confessions, but
right.
If you're studying, you have to look at all. You have to look at the guilty, and then determine from that,
Yeah.
His ability for social psychology is excellent. He knows a person's behaviors, environment, and techniques are what create it.
Yeah. So the question was, and amongst the unreliable confessions,
she's backstage again. She got kicked out.
Uh-oh.
Sorry, Alice. I didn't notice you weren't there. I was looking at chat.
You got kicked out. Hello, Alice.
Hello. She might have to go out and come back in again.
We're back.
Oh, there you are.
There she is.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on. I'm sitting on my tablet today. I'm not in front of the computer today, and for some reason it just kicked me out. I seen myself there, and I was just about to say, well, this is showing that the guy's no charlatan. You know what I mean? He knows exactly what he's talking about. He's done these kind of things for years and years and years.
Yep.
And I'm talking away to myself, and I'm waiting for an answer, and I'm like, what the hell? And then I was like, oh, bugger.
And then I was wondering, why didn't Alice jump in here and say just what I was saying? Because I know we do the same things.
Yep.
Look, you're not there. Okay.
But yeah, no, this guy definitely, he knows what he's talking about. He studied it for many, 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 many decades.
That's what qualifies him as an expert.
Yep. So he asked him, and amongst the unreliable confessions that you've studied, some of them are what we called proven false confessions. So that's another term that is something, proven false confession. He says, correct. And then what do you mean by proven false confessions? And he says, well, it's very difficult to prove a confession false because you have to prove the negative. And strictly speaking, that's impossible to do. So what we in field have tried to do is figure out how can you say when you're doing research on confession cases that a confession is false to near or absolute certainty. And there are 4 ways you can talk about. There are 4 ways you can prove a confession false or to that standard. And so we describe those as proven false confessions. One, if you can show it was physically impossible for the person to have committed the crime. Let's say they were, he's like, sorry, you were going into blah, blah, blah. He interrupted him. Yeah, no. I'll be very brief, which he kind of wasn't, but that they were in jail at the time. Oh, it was brief at this time. Okay. That they were in jail at the time. 2, if you can show the crime did not occur, say the murder victim showed up alive. 3, and this is more common these days, if there's a scientific evidence that exonerates dispositively. And then 4, and then 4, if the true perpetrator is identified and everyone agrees that's the true perpetrator. So those are the 4 ways you can, if you quote unquote,
well, there's no DNA for
prove a false confession. So those are the 4 ways that you can prove a false confession. If you can show that the crime, it was not physically possible for the crime to be committed. And by what he means by that is, like in his example, if the person was already in jail, or let's even say they're in a different state altogether, right? If I was in Arizona, you couldn't say that I did a crime in Florida, right?
Yeah.
So,
but I mean, a couple of them do relate to Brendan.
Yeah.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, they do.
No evidence whatsoever that that lad was involved in any type of crime, especially rape and mutilation of a body or anything like that. Because for one, there was no body to be able to be examined.
Fire hole, remember?
Yeah. I know the number 2 would definitely apply to Brendan if you could show that the crime did not occur, because there's no evidence that the crime that Brendan quote unquote confessed to occurred. Nothing that he said happened.
Believe me, they couldn't clean that up in 3 days, because that's when the cops showed up, was 3 days after, not 5, like they tried to say. They were there 3 days after, and Remaker said, I think they got the wrong person. There's nothing happening here. But they didn't listen to that. 2 days later, they changed their mind.
Right. 3, and this is more common these days, if there's scientific evidence that exonerates this, there's no evidence that proves Brendan did the crime.
Hi, Mary.
So to me, that qualifies him for number 3, because there's no evidence to prove that the crime even was committed.
Right.
There's no knife.
Right.
There's no crime scene. There's no DNA evidence. There's nothing.
Right.
And then 4, if the true perpetrator is identified and everyone agrees it's the true perpetrator, I mean, I hope one day that's found. So,
yeah, I don't think we'll ever find it, but we do know that these guys are totally innocent.
Yeah. So, okay. Down to page 202. So he asked him approximately how many proven false confessions have you analyzed? Proven false confessions, and he said between 200 and 300. I've personally analyzed. That's a lot.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. It's actually really a sad number.
Think about that. 300 people given false confessions. Like I said, when I first started this 5 years ago, it was 23%. Now it's 33%. Something's happening here that is not, that means, that there's 3 out of 10, that are false confessions. That's crazy.
Yeah. So, all right. So he breaks down more of this that I'm going to read. So he said, you've developed a categorization for those kinds of confessions as well. Standard proven confession. That's what he's fallen short of a standard proven confession.
I was going to say, just to break that down, back in those days, they were using the Reed technique. Now we're trying not to use that anymore, I guess, in a lot of states, but not a lot, but a few. So we have to also think of that. They were the technique they used. That's very important here.
Yeah. So he is basically going to break down, there are unreliable confessions that fall short of the proven standard. Correct. And you develop characterization for those. And then he's like, we call those highly probable false confessions. The 4 situations that I mentioned, you can be innocent and have falsely confessed and still not be able to prove your confession false because the crime did occur. The true perpetrator has not been apprehended, and it was not physically impossible. Maybe you were with your family and no one's believing that alibi. That happened with Stephen. And there's simply no scientific evidence. Many crimes don't leave behind scientific evidence. I actually started that because I thought that was an interesting statement for him to make. Many crimes don't leave behind scientific evidence.
That's why there's so many cold cases.
Yeah. Which is kind of,
You would think it, knowing DNA now, that it would be almost impossible to not leave some kind of evidence, but there are ways, outside, weather, things like that, depending on where the crime existed. But in this case, there would have had to have been DNA evidence for Brendan to be doing this at this time.
I would think
the way they described it, there would have to be, right?
Right.
Yeah. Obviously. I mean, you would think that there was evidence there to prove the things
hair,
that
semen,
had said.
Blood.
Brendan said she was stabbed, they cut her hair, her throat was slit. She was raped.
Yep.
You know what I mean? There would be stains everywhere. There would be blood everywhere. There should have been hair if they cut her hair, everything like that. But
And
no, and you walk through a video, you see the bed where this is supposed to have happened, and it is immaculate. There is no staining, there is no blood, there is no hair. I mean, what was it? 7 officers on their hands and knees, meticulously going over that floor and everything, but yet they couldn't come across blood or hair that Brendan is supposed to have said. You know,
my favorite part is where they apparently raped and tortured this poor girl for hours and hours and tied her to a bed. And you see crime scene photos of the police officer sitting on that same bed.
Yep. Sitting on the bed. Yep. Right on the very bedding that was there. Okay. So, you know.
Yeah. The person who was sitting on the bed said that he was sitting on the bed in court. So why is he sitting on a potential crime scene?
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
It is just ridiculous.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is. And nowadays with the DNA progression that it has come to nowadays, if there was any way the state wanted to prove Brendan, they could retest that stuff, right?
Yeah.
You know, but there is nothing. There was no crime scene there at all. The only thing that was there was a fire, and they're not even sure what day that fire was.
Yeah, I firmly, and I know everybody, I know Barb said, Brendan, buddy, pretty sure it was on the 31st. I personally don't think it was on the 31st. I think that it was on another day, and that everybody was just confused the days and stuff like that, because these people have bonfires all the time. And
they burn barrels all the time.
And they burn barrels all the time. I think it was just part of their normal routine. And, you know, it's just like taking out the trash. Do you remember the last time you took out the trash? Like, what day did you take out the trash? You know what I mean? Oh, she's Hey, Barb.
Yeah.
Frame all of us. I Beetlejuice her.
They sure did frame y'all.
You've also got to remember that even Stephen couldn't remember when they had the fire. You know what I mean? So if Stephen can't remember whether it was the 31st or the 28th or the 29th or the 27th that they had the fire, you know what I mean? How the hell is Brendan supposed to remember when his uncle had a fire, when all he did was go and help him collect stuff to put in the fire, spend a wee bit of time at the fire, and then went home? You know? It's just, it's like ridiculous how these officers and that done what they did to Brendan, feeding him the information, and then didn't do the investigation to try and back up what the Wayne was saying. You know? And if they'd have done that investigation properly, the way they'd have done it, they would have realised in the first 5 minutes, or they should have realised in the first 5 minutes, that what Brendan was saying was not true.
Right.
Well,
no crime scene.
That would mean that they were consciously not trying to get him to say shit. So that's the thing. They were trying to get him to give a story, basically. So
like they used all the 4 steps except for the DNA. You know what I mean? Pretty much. On Brendan.
Yeah, that's interesting that they didn't do that, to be honest with you. But I guess because I don't know, sometimes I wish that there was some sort of DNA, because that would be easier to
debunk all this bullshit.
Debunk it. Yeah, exactly. I wish there was some sort of DNA involved, but there isn't. There's nothing. But I mean, that shows that he didn't commit a crime or anything. But what I'm trying to say is that it's easier to debunk DNA than it is of a false confession.
Words. Right.
Yeah.
Well, that's just it. That's what keeps a conviction, is no DNA. And that's why they got rid of the bones, because they want to keep this the conviction. you know,
Yeah.
because nowadays,
that's what annoys me though, Linda, is the fact that a lot of these officers, a lot of police forces, whether it's here in the UK or whether it's in America or not, they rely on DNA evidence to convict somebody, you know.
Right.
But the fact that there is none whatsoever belonging to Brendan or Stephen,
right?
And with poor Brendan, it was the words that they fed him.
Yep. And
that got them in this situation. But yet, now that they've got their conviction, they can't see what they done was wrong and that there is no DNA. So if they're quick enough at convicting somebody when there is DNA to actually prove that a perpetrator done this horrible thing that they done, then why is it not taking them the same sort of instincts when somebody makes, like Brendan, who's intellectually impaired and doesn't understand a lot of things in a way and can be easily manipulated, you know?
Underage,
why can
no
they
parent,
see that?
right.
Yeah, exactly, Linda. Underage as well. You know what I mean?
Right.
How can they not pick up on these things?
You know,
pick up on the DNA.
I feel you, Alice, because what I want to say is all the things that create the environment for a false confession were done to Brendan. He wasn't he's underage. He didn't have any supervisional parents or lawyer there. You know, he has a language disability, which meant he couldn't understand a whole lot of questions at once, you know, and he, you know, scared, and where they put him in, and these are professionals on him. So if you took all of that, I mean, that's why Dr. Leo knows that this is a proven false confession, because he takes all of that, the first 4 steps he said, and it's all Brendan except for the DNA. There is no DNA. And he also states here that just because your statements are said, but there's nothing to disprove them. See, there is nothing. But I mean, we all see that his stories were never the same. They were, you know,
they changed as the investigators needed them to change.
Right, right. Every time they interviewed, I say that loosely, they gave him something different, and the story was different. Every time, they interrogated him, the story became different because they needed him to say certain things.
Yeah,
but got him was the last one where Wiegert said who shot him in the head, or shot her in the head. He gave that away because nobody knew that. But now, see, a rational judge, jury, and the justice system should see all these factors that us lay people see. And Dr. Leo does.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, you would think so, Linda. You would think that that's how it goes. You know what I mean? But it's not.
No, Wisconsin has their own fucking rules because they're assholes, and they are going to stick to this shit till the day they die. And hopefully they're all dying. He'll be out. That's what I think.
Yeah, but
I love the state, and love some of the people, but Wisconsin can stick it right up their ass as far as their justice system. So
the justice system fucking sucks. And I mean, sometimes I wish that Brendan had a wee bit more of the, how can I say it? Because I don't mean any disrespect by it whatsoever. But a wee bit more of the street smarts about him, you know, knowing that yes, you can talk back to the police, depending on how you do it. If you say, fuck you, I'm not saying nothing, then you're in trouble. But if you say to them, look, I don't want to speak to you anymore, I want a lawyer, I want my mum, you know, whatever, then maybe things might have been a wee bit different, because that was the thing we look with his interrogation. Is that look at the wee bit more street smarts that Brendan, and as soon as they started putting towards the, you know, did you kill Jodie sort of thing, Luke was like, right, that's it, stop. I want a lawyer.
Brendan was raised Brendan was raised with respect. He's a gentle giant. You know what I mean? So he didn't know that. And there's a lot of people that don't know that. Even grown people don't know that they can do that. They're told in their Miranda rights you can stop, but they think if they do stop it, they're guilty because they want to prove their innocence, right?
Yeah, the police tell you that. If you ask for a lawyer, that kind of tells us you're guilty.
Yeah, that's what people think, but it's not. It's your right.
That's what they tell them, though. That's exactly that's what police make that scenario.
Yes,
They want you to believe. If you ask for a lawyer, you're guilty.
Why do you need a lawyer? We're only asking you questions. It's not like you're in trouble, you know, because
if you refuse a polygraph, then you must be guilty. Because why would you refuse a polygraph? Because it's my constitutional right.
Don't we watch something and say, why didn't that person? Why does that person saying lawyer up? Me, I understand it. Because if you get me in a room, I'm going to say I want a lawyer. I don't care.
Exactly.
I teach my kids the same things. The 4 best words in the world when you talk to a policeman. I want a lawyer. That's it. Yeah. Shut it off.
Then you've got the scenario though as well, Linda, where you can be that smart and you can be like, oh, wait a minute, they're accusing me of something, right? I'm not answering any more questions. I want my lawyer. So you tell them, I'm not answering any more questions. I want my lawyer. Right. And then that's when they go, oh, but you don't need a lawyer. We're only asking you questions. Why do you need a lawyer? Are you guilty? You know what I mean? So they twist the narrative of that as well. That then makes that person who's being interviewed think, well, I've been told that I can stop and ask for a lawyer, but now you're telling me I'm not allowed a lawyer, because they can twist it and say, oh, well, you don't need a lawyer. Well, you're not a suspect. You're only a witness.
When they say to you, well, you can stop this at any time, but then like they did with Brendan, but you're still good to talk to us, right?
Right.
Because they say one thing and then contradict it with kind of a more way of saying, well, you still want to talk to us, right?
Right.
I mean, come on, this is a kid they're using these techniques on, and adults, grown men have an issue with this, grown women, I can't imagine it,
Exactly. Just take the Garrett Phillips case, Linda.
Yeah.
Where they took Mr. Hillary into the police station, asked him questions and things like that, and he got wise to what they were trying to do. So he stopped the interview, said that he wanted his lawyer and everything like that, and they said to him that he was free to leave, but yet they stood in front of the door so that he couldn't leave. And if he tried to push his way past to leave, then that's him getting a assault on a police officer charge. You know what I mean? So even the most fullest, comprehensive person like me, you, Becca, or whatever, it can still happen to us, even though they say that we're free to walk out anytime we want or whatever, but we aren't really. So you can imagine just how Brendan would have felt as of the respect for his elders and things like that, and no one to speak back to the police. So that way he's having to sit there and listen to these officers spew a lot of bull and have no way to defend himself whatsoever. And it's wrong.
Yeah. So let's continue. Let's see. Where am I? Okay, 18. So we talk about highly probable false confessions when an analysis of the weight of the evidence overwhelmingly supports that the confession is false and there's no good evidence that is reliable or true, which is all of Brendan's, a lesser standard. So for the purpose of this examination, if you're comfortable with this, when I refer to, that's this question.
I was talking and nobody was listening. I was just rattling off the best things I ever said. And I was muted. I was listening. When Alice was talking, I was agreeing, but I also wanted, I'll just say it real briefly. When the circumstances in which they got Brendan, like they came to school and talked to him. So he thought, okay, I'm in school, must be okay to talk to him, right? Then they take him out of school. So he's probably thinking, well, if they can do that, then I guess I'm okay to talk to him. He's a child.
Yeah.
I just wanted to say that.
So
it wasn't exactly how I said it before, but good enough.
So he asked him about books that he's written, and this is the book that I was telling you guys that I'm going to buy on payday. By Richard Leo, is The Police Interrogations in American Justice, which is about the history, psychologically, policy, and legal issues related to police interrogations and false confessions. And this was published in 2008.
Can you imagine the knowledge he's got now, though, since 2008?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I also edited a book on the Miranda, issues related to the Miranda, which include the psychology of interrogations and false confessions, which I'd also like to read.
Which we were just talking about, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, but that's all right if you know your Miranda rights, you know what I mean? Or you can understand your Miranda rights. Brendan didn't understand those questions that were getting put to him. He did not understand Miranda rights.
I don't believe anybody really does, because it's not an everyday thing we deal with. It's some people probably have never even heard of it because they've never been in trouble with the law.
Right.
You know?
Here, we all know what I would like to say the media tells us what our Miranda rights are.
Right. Yeah. Read them yourself once. Yeah. Have them read to you once. I have.
Right. Here. Because we all seen TV episodes, what are our Miranda rights in simple terms. Let me see if I can find what are your Miranda rights.
Well, your Miranda rights are the you have, what is it? You have the
right to remain silent.
Anything can or will be used against you in a court of law. You know,
right. I'm trying to find the actual.
You have the right to an attorney, or if you cannot afford an attorney, one
will be provided. Yes, yeah, one will be provided. So
now, you still want to talk to us? It's up to you. But I want a lawyer.
Yeah, exactly. No, I want a lawyer.
Yeah,
I mean, that's it. I mean, period.
And this is another thing that's really very, very interesting, is that, court cases used to get overturned and things if you didn't get your Miranda rights read to you, right? Well, nowadays, if they don't read them to you, it's still okay. Okay. It's not a part of that anymore. They don't enforce that anymore. So that's also a big question mark in your mind when you go to court and you say, I wasn't read my Miranda rights before I talked to them. Well, that doesn't matter. You were read them after you were arrested. That's what they'll say. And that's how they get away with that. So that's a big no in the justice system.
Yeah, but it should be a big no, because that's when you're getting told that's your understandings that you don't have to speak to them.
Right.
You can, you are entitled to a lawyer, but anything that you do say and can say can be used against you in a court of law.
Right.
Like
when you're sitting in the back of a cop car and you're just blabbling on stuff, they can use that. And they can use it against you. And then you can say, I didn't get read my rights. And they'll say, I read them to you when I was arresting you. They can get away with that now. And that is your choice. That's your opportunity for choice, is your Miranda rights.
Yeah. See, so I think everything.
Go ahead,
this is the script that they read to you. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can be used against you in the court of law. You have the right to talk to an attorney before law enforcement asks you any questions. You have the right to have an attorney with you during questioning. If you cannot afford an attorney, one will be appointed for you before any questioning if you request it. If you decide to answer questions now without any attorney present, you have the right to stop answering at any time. And this was Miranda versus Arizona, 1966.
Yep, but that's what I mean. When they're talking to you, when you first get on the scene, right?
Established, I think, in 1966.
Yeah, when you first get on the scene, though, a cop is talking to you.
Yeah. Well, when you're arrested and you're being, So when you're
not, when you're pulled over and they're talking to you, you're not read this. So a good cop should read you that and then ask you questions.
Oh, my understanding is that the Miranda rights, my understanding is your Miranda rights kicks in right as you're being detained or arrested. not when the cop first talks to you, because a cop can come up to you at any point and talk to you about anything. It's when you're being arrested, do they have to read you your Miranda rights?
They can use
I know they can. That's why I know they can, but that's what I'm saying. They don't have to. A good cop, even a good cop, does not have to read your Miranda rights because there's no reason to.
No, no, that's right. That's right.
I have seen cops, even on, you know, just simple things.
I understand what you're saying.
Right. I get it.
Yeah. I understand what you're saying. I'm just saying legally, the Miranda rights only are read to you when
you're being detained.
Now, citizens should know that they shouldn't talk to a cop, period. Right? Because anything you say can be used against you now or when you're arrested. But they don't have it's not a gray area. Miranda right. Yeah. So they don't have to read it to you. And I don't want to say a good cop would tell you your Miranda rights. I've seen them do it.
When they pull them in the car, they say, okay, let me read this to you before we talk.
When they put them in the car, when they detain them. Not when they walk up to you and say, hey, what's going on here?
Yeah, like, what's your license? Things like that. No, I'm not talking about that. I'm just talking about, like, if you get put in the back of a car.
If you get put in the back of the car, then you're supposed to be read your Miranda rights. Yes.
Right, but a lot of them don't.
I mean, it should be as soon as they slap the handcuffs on you. As soon as they put handcuffs on you and say you're being detained for such and such, and then your Miranda rights. You know, that's how it should be done. But it's not done like that because cops feel that they can come up to you, they can ask you questions, be polite and be, we're just inquiring about what's happened. Can you tell us what's happened, what the story is? So you say, so and so down the street robbed my car. You know.
There is a difference between being detained, being arrested, and a cop just talking to you. If you are detained or arrested, yes, they have to read your Miranda rights. If you call the police and they come up to you and then they start talking to you, they do not have to read the Miranda rights.
Right. We get that. Yeah, we get that. But
so if a cop detains you or arrests you and they don't read their Miranda rights to you, then yes, you need to tell a lawyer.
Yeah, but that doesn't. What I'm saying is, it does not make a big difference anymore in the court's eyes. And I've seen people go to jail and in prison, and their Miranda rights were never read to them until they were put in jail. Okay?
They needed to have a lawyer and tell the lawyer, because I've seen cases thrown out because the cops did not read their Miranda rights.
Yes, I've seen that too. But I'm saying it's a big gray area. There are people that are in jail that did not get read their Miranda rights, and they still can't use that as a defense, which I think is completely wrong.
And they need to find a lawyer that specializes in Miranda rights.
Yeah, and most people are poor. Most people don't have a savings account that says, guess what? I might be detained.
But even your defense lawyer that's appointed to you.
Yeah, and they all work for the state.
Right. Well, I mean,
we could debate on this, but you are correct. The law states exactly what you just said. And that is the way it is supposed to be.
I would have thought, I'm sorry, even if I didn't have a lawyer, I would be arguing that in court left and right. So, I mean, because if they didn't read your Miranda rights, then I've seen cases get thrown out right on the get-go for people who are actually guilty of things. They're like, I'm sorry, we have to let him go. You fucked up. You didn't read his Miranda rights.
That's right. Your procedure was not done legally. Right. So, I've seen that too. But I've also seen people stay in jail that are innocent for the crime they were accused of. And they didn't get their red, because they were brought down, and talked to, just stay here for a second, and we'll be right back. Well, then he's like, well, am I under arrest?
Well, no, if anything, also, this is a lesson in no matter what a cop says or does to you, keep your mouth shut.
That's right. Yeah. Shut up and say, I want a lawyer the minute they start telling you, come back to my car.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, anyway,
exactly. We don't like to live in an ideal world where everything that is supposed to work the way it's supposed to work would work the way it was supposed to work, but it's not like that at all. Right. You know what I mean? And poor Brendan is the prime example of how these things do not fucking work.
Well,
you know
because
what I mean?
he reads him his
read him
rights.
his Miranda rights.
Right.
They told him and read these Miranda rights, and Brendan did not have a clue.
Well, because as they're reading them to him, they say, "Are you still want to talk to us? Right? You're still. It's okay to still talk to us. Do you remember what we said? You know, that kind of thing."
Right. Here's the thing. Yeah, Brendan can only comprehend so many words in a sentence at a time. And if you're listing off everything I just said at a very high speed, is he going to catch all that?
Yeah.
And then to say, do you still want to talk to us? And or he was in that room. He told they made it sound like he needed to talk to them.
Yeah.
See, that's the thing. The police, before they pulled him into any interrogation room, they manipulated him into thinking that he was there just to help them.
Yep.
You're here to help us find this missing person.
We already know what happened. We just need you to tell us.
Well, first, when he was in the back of that car, they were telling him she's sick and she has medicine she needs to take and she needs to go home to her family.
Yeah.
You need to help us find her. So he thought he was doing them a favor.
That's right.
Yep. Yeah, but that's how they manipulate any situation, though, Becca. With anybody that they arrest, but they do it more so with under average intellectual people. You know, I mean, there's some adults out there that have got the same intellectual difficulties what Brendan had at the age of 15, 16. Some adults have still got that sort of mentality, you know, and they are manipulated in that same sort of way. Right. So it's down to how the police investigate everything and how they are supposed to put it across to you, you know, but because they've got away with this for so many years, it is just a natural occurrence with them now that they think that they can go in and they can do anything and say anything that they want to anybody, and that's how they get these bloody false confessions.
Well, they also need to that's why it's so important that the police are not allowed to lie to you, okay? Because they are lying, okay? In a sense, in a roundabout way, it's still lying when they say, but you still want to talk to us because you can help us, you know. That's lying to them. They shouldn't be like pushing such a, you know, good cop thing. You're doing such a good thing. They should just be, you know, clinical about it. That might be easier, but no, they're allowed to use your emotion. Okay. And that's what they did with Brendan. They used his emotion as a good person, thinking he's going to help this girl, you know?
Yeah. So I'm going to go ahead and continue this and try to get past this part.
I'll shut up.
Yeah. Well, no, you guys don't have to shut up, but. So I'm going to skip ahead because he talks about the books that he's written and helped write. There's a couple of papers and articles that he wrote that I'm going to try to find because I'd like to post them in the group for people to read because I think that's awesome. Some law reviews like the Journal of Criminal and Criminal Law and Criminology. So he's also a peer reviewer himself. So he's written papers and then people have peer reviewed the process, and then he's also been a peer reviewer himself, which I guess Mr. Drizzen says is an honor to be considered a peer reviewer, and he's like, I guess so. Lots of tedious work, but it's an honor. Anyway, so he mentioned some cases that he's been involved in. Wisconsin Supreme Court, that he's been citationed in, I should say. So he was citation in Wisconsin Supreme Court in the Jarrell J case. There's the Corley versus United States, Missouri versus Siebert. That he's been to 5 interrogation training courses, which he's been to the main one that law enforcement teaches to law enforcement in Chicago. It's the Reed and Associates interrogation training firm in Chicago. That's the big one. And then he's also been to a 2-day advanced interrogation training course that Reed and Associates also does across the United States. He attended a 5-day introductory interrogation training course in Northern California. He did an advanced interrogation training course in Georgia that was by invitation only, so that's really impressive. I believe it, and that's where at the time, and I believe it's still true today, all federal police were trained, with exception of the FBI, who of course have their own training academy. And like I said, this is all back in 2010, so maybe it's changed since then, but he did a lot at the time before 2010. And he is a certified Reed interrogator because he has the certifications that he earned during these seminars and stuff. And have you ever been on the advisory committee of police departments? And he has one of the police department in Long Beach, police department in Southern California. There's a city of 2 million people. I was on an academy advisor committee in the middle of 2001 to around 2003. There is a committee that advises the chief academics. So he's done that. Very well educated guy. Have you ever given testimonies? So he's asking, have you ever given testimonies as far as your for false confessions and interrogations in general? And he says yes. Have you ever in the state of Wisconsin? He says yes. And then he says, I believe it was 2006, and it was the Criminal Justice Study Commission. Wait. Have you ever given testimony before? Yeah, legislation or executive bodies on the subject of interrogation. Yes, in Wisconsin, it was the Criminal Justice Study Commission. So that's interesting that he actually did this. In 2006, he did the Criminal Justice Study Commission, which was the year that Brendan, or the year that this crime was committed. So this is fairly recent to the crime that Brendan was convicted of. Scroll. How many times have you been qualified as an expert to testify? 188 times. So that's a lot. And how many of those times have been in federal court? He says 10 times. And then another, how many times have you testified in state court? 10 times in federal, but I also testified 5 other times in military courts. He says he thinks that's technically considered federal court. So 188 times in total, 15 times in federal and military court. So that would mean 173 times in state court. How many states have you testified in? 27. So he travels around a lot and does this.
Yeah, so that's what I was saying, Becca. He's not a charlatan at what he does. You know what I mean? If there is something military happening or at a state level or whatever, this is the guy that they call. You know what I mean? So it's beggars belief that the 250 experts that have came forward in the last few years in defense of Brendan, some of them are at the highest of their fucking careers, and they are not being believed. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's crazy. I also highlighted this because I felt like it was kind of important that he's been involved in 2 cases in Wisconsin, one in Appleton, which is the State versus Labatt case, and then one in Chippewa Falls, Wisconsin versus Timothy, on the page. and I don't know, I'm not even going to try to say this name right here. But anyway, so he testified during those with his expertise, and then down here on page 15, he asked him what kind of testimony, basically. When you testify at trials, what is your general subject matter of your testimony? So this is important because I feel like this is kind of what he's going to be doing today, at this time with Brendan's case. The subject matter of the testimony is generally the same, as that there's more discussion of the problem of false confessions. Sometimes the topic of false confessions is relevant in the pretrial suppression hearing, sometimes it's not, but it's primary focus of my testimony at trial. So when I testify at trial, not only do I testify about what I mentioned earlier in the suppression motions, but also about the social science research on how and why police interrogations can lead to a false confession, what we know about the phenomenon of false confessions, the risk factors, both situational having to do with the interrogation environment, as well as interrogation techniques for false confessions, as well as individual factors that might predispose a subject to be more vulnerable to suggestion or interrogation influence and make a false confession. Indication of reliability and unreliability, how social scientists study reliability, the problem of contamination, and sometimes also good and bad police practices. Police manuals will articulate things police should do and shouldn't do. It's largely, I think, based on the research, or at least in part, and so the scope of testimony usually is much broader in a trial and is more focused on the issues related to false confessions usually. I might offer specific opinions about interrogation practices. Sometimes I'm asked to do that, other times I'm not, about the risk inherent from certain practices. I never, however, testify about the ultimate opinion, whether or not I personally think a confession is false. So this is, so he's basically saying this is pre-trial stuff, or even at trial. He doesn't necessarily say if he thinks, if he personally thinks it's a confession is false. So he said, so Drizzen asks, okay, so you provide framework for the fact finder to analyze whether or not a confession is reliable or not, but don't reach the ultimate conclusion. And he says, correct. And the framework to understand the psychology of interrogation. Much of this is beyond common knowledge and even counterintuitive. So, have you ever testified as an expert in post-conviction proceedings? So that's what this is for Brendan, is a post-conviction proceeding. He said yes. And then he asked them how many times. And he gives an answer.
So to me, for that, Becca, to me, what he's saying there is he doesn't sit in a court and be like, right, yes, this is a coerced confession. What he does there is he goes in and he says, well, the officer should have done it this way, could have done it that way. If he'd done it this way, it might have got a bit more detail, a bit more information. He's not going to come right out and say, Officer Fanny Adams there completely coerced this person. He'll say Fanny Adams could have put it to the perpetrator this way, or the victim this way, or so I think that's what my understanding is of that wee section there that you just read. He'll not completely come out and say, that cop coerced that person outright. He'll go in a roundabout way of saying it by saying you could have done this, and this.
Right. He's exactly. He's basically saying he can give scientific research analysis. He can say everything up to the point of, do you think this person has been false confess? Do you think this person gave a false confession? He cannot say yes or no during an actual trial. So, like, for instance, let's say when Brendan was on trial, he could go up in Brendan's trial and he could talk about the scientific, about the confession, what they did wrong, what they could have done better, point out what could have been bad or good or whatever. But then at the very end of it, if they said, do you believe that this is a false confession that Brendan gave, he will not say yes or no.
Yeah.
Now he switches it up though, and he says, which I think is really important, this particular thing, because he says, because of the nature of post-conviction proceedings, is the subject matter of your testimony in post-conviction stage the same? And he says there's often fewer limitations, if any, because of the nature. So he doesn't have those limitations of whether or not he can state if somebody is false confession or not. So he can be a little bit more open and say, yes, in my opinion, this is a false confession.
Yeah.
So that's basically what I didn't highlight anything on this because it's just more statistics and how many times he's been to trial and post-conviction hearings and percentages of how many, which is all very interesting. And I if you're listening right now and you want to read through all of this, because they would take forever just to read through all of this. Hey, Rhonda, feel free to download, like Linda posted it. It's in the description, the link to this, and you could read it yourself and actually go through it. He's a very educated man. He knows exactly what he's talking about, and that's basically what all of this is doing.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go ahead and skip to page, hold on. See all of that. It's just more. And then this is where Drizzen Judge, at this time, I would like to tender Dr. Leo as an expert in the field of police interrogations and confessions and the social psychology of police interrogations and confessions, and the court says any objection. And of course, Fallon, if there's any objection, I'd like to make a foundation grounds as our rules of evidence require. There's not a necessity for finding here. And then that's correct. And then I was confused, and also Drizzen. I'm sorry, I don't understand that objection.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
I was like, what? Exactly. What did he just say? What he's saying is that he will object as apparently questions are raised during Dr. Leo's testimony. You're preferring him as an expert witness here. His credentials certainly entitle him under Chapter 907 to be considered an expert witness. So I actually highlighted that and I wrote was accepted because that's the judge's way of saying he is an expert witness. I'll allow it. So, and then he starts talking to him about, he asked him the question, what is the leading police interrogation training manual? And then he answers, was the John Reed and Associates, the manual that John Reed and Associates, the first author is Fred Abua, the second is John Reed, the third is Joseph Buckley, and the fourth is Brian Jane. And then they came out with the criminal interrogations and confessions, and its fourth edited publishing in 2001, which I'm sure by this point it's probably been updated again because, like I said, this was in 2010. And then he makes a comment that Mr. and Bua and Mr. Reed are no longer alive and correct. And I think that's where we're going to leave it today. Because we've been going on for, an hour and 15 minutes. So, anybody object to that?
Objection, relevance.
Okay. Relevance is that I need to walk around and eat breakfast because Anyway, so we'll be doing this next Sunday, I believe, because I still have Sunday mornings off. Does anybody have any comments or questions or anything they would like to point out or anything like that? So, like I said, today's was basically a rundown of who Dr. Leo was and his expertise. So it may have been kind of boring for some people, but I thought it was fascinating. You're fine.
I did it again.
Yes.
I was on mute. I'm talking to you guys the whole time thinking you're hearing me because I stopped talking, you start. It just wasn't working.
Button, Linda! Push the button!
Yeah, exactly. No, I don't think it's boring. I think we covered a lot of things besides our personal opinions. You know what I mean?
Right.
This guy is, he's not somebody who just picked up a book and said, or like us.
I have an opinion.
This. Right. Yeah. We have an opinion. He's the expert in this field. I don't know of anybody that has his credentials or is more qualified to analyze than this man here. Bravo to him. Same as Stephen Drizzen. I'm sorry, that guy he's fire.
Yeah, no, they're all very good at what they do, and I'm very impressed so far with Dr. Richard Leo, and that's why I'm excited about
completely by him. This whole thing, as I've went over this before with Eric Hosey, so what I mean. But it's really good to hear this again because I haven't looked at this for so long.
Yeah, well, and I know there's so many new people now coming in to Making a Murderer. I've noticed, and I just want, and I just
Eric Hosey always says you gotta repeat once a month. I go back to something I did last month. He says because there are so many new people coming. And they don't think to go look in the, library of your videos, right? They just want to see what you got to say about it. So I agree. And I think it's a great subject. I'm glad we're back to doing this. So thank you. And that's
You're welcome.
The end of my
I thought this was also because like I said before, we were originally going to be doing Kelly.
Yeah, but I can't
so
take
equally
him.
important, but it's also very angry. So I thought this would be a nice starter to get into it. And then when we're done with Dr. Richard Leo's part in the hearing, then we'll go back to O'Kelly.
Just doing this with Dr. Leo, we can just look at anything he did, Michael O'Kelly, and know completely,
everything he did,
everything and beyond,
Yeah. It's very disgusting what.
Besides that, he's not a cop. He wasn't anything
but
a polygraph reader, and he lied. He lied about the polygraph. Isn't that a kicker, huh? The polygraph taker lies about the results of the polygraph. Wow, he's an expert.
To manipulate his underage
candidate to be a hero.
Candidate to interrogate him. Yeah.
But the fact that Dr. Leo is an expert in the read technique of all things. One of the main things that got used against Brendan was the read technique. And he's an expert in that. And as you say, he's done federal court, he's done military court, he's done state court. So for these courts, these three courts and the Supreme Court to be coming back to this guy for testimony after testimony after testimony, there's something in his credentials that make them go back to him. You know what I mean? So it's not like he's a charlatan who's just jumped on the bandwagon since 2015, since the documentary's been done and everything like that. He's been doing this for years and years and years and years, and was probably in the game when the read technique first came out, or no long in the game when the read technique first came out and everything like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, where that started, don't you? The read technique. You know where the read technique started? Let me tell you. In Minnesota. St. Paul, Minnesota. Isn't that lovely?
It was developed in the 1950s.
And they had a conference, and then the read technique went to the Nelson, not the read. I shouldn't say the read technique started here. The Nelson technique started here, which is the read technique. And then added to that is what Brendan became the first of, recording and filming
in Wisconsin.
In Wisconsin, yes. They went over there, they had a conference, and the added Nelson came from Minnesota, because we believe in, let's see what's going on. You know what I mean?
Right.
And,
Brendan Dassey was the first recorded interrogation in Wisconsin.
In Wisconsin, but the recording, the added onto it, the recording of that option that states take came from Minnesota. And I'm glad, because we are a really good, look, you can look at our conviction rate and a wrongful conviction rate, and we don't have immunity here. That's one good thing in this state. Every state across the union should have that, no immunity.
Right.
If you're doing something illegal and you are somebody who's supposed to be upholding the law, I'm a firm believer you should be really convicted of, something like that. You should take the consequences and be accountable for that. But of course, not everybody believes that, but I do believe in being accountable. They have to be, because
I agree.
They're seeking justice, and doing it in a illegal, twisted way to make it work for them is totally unconstitutional and against our justice system.
Yeah, but see, the problem for me is Brendan was the first one to be recorded in Wisconsin.
Right.
But what was said to that Wayne from the time he got took for the school in the car to the police station to when that video started recording his that, as far as I'm concerned, comes to a minor like that. If you're going to pick them up for the home, if you're going to pick them up for school or whatever, you should have your body camera on all the time. You're not allowed to switch the volume off. You're not allowed to touch it once that camera is on. It stays on until you pick them up, while you've got them in the car, while you've got them in the police station, booking them in, or whatever it is that they call it. Say they're in the interview room, that camera should be going at all times. And then when they're ready to press record on the camera that is sitting in the interview room, then they switch on that camera before they switch off their body cameras. And that's the way it should be, because anything could have been said. You've just got to remember, in the interviews with Brendan, it was, do you remember our conversation we had, Brendan?
Yeah.
What conversation? Before the cameras were fucking switched on.
Yeah. What about Fox Hills?
What was the other one? What was the other one? Do you remember the
video? The video do you remember the video?
Exactly like
the movie or whatever they said.
Yeah, what video are they talking about? Are they talking about a video that they have showed Brendan, or are they talking about the video that happened the day before, or whatever? We don't know. And that's what bugs me about this whole case is what were they saying to that Wayne before that camera was switched off? What were they saying to that Wayne when they switched off the camera to take a break, or whatever it was that they done, or to change the videotape or the cassette tape in the interviews, that's what bugs me.
Yeah, exactly. And the way they interrogated, who had no right to do what he did, Kelly, he had absolutely no right whatsoever to do that to Brendan. He is not qualified to do what he did, none of that stuff. So he, that should have been just that right there, as far as I'm concerned, should have threw the case right out the window.
Yeah.
But anyway,
so
talk about the book. I'm sorry.
I posted the link. You're fine. You guys are fine. This is the book that Dr. Richard Leo wrote and published, Police Interrogations and American Justice. I posted the link in the chat if you guys also would like to purchase the book, because I think eventually, after we're done with post-conviction stuff, I might be doing a review on this book. So I'm definitely going to be buying it anyway and reading it myself, because I think this is great. I think that he should be read, and that way we can, like, I keep saying this and I really agree. The more we understand what each person's role or the psychology or about interrogations or anything, then we can understand better what happened to Brendan and what went wrong. So that's why I'm basically doing all this. So if you guys want to purchase the book, if not, I don't know. Does anybody have like a does anybody have a online copy of this book? Maybe.
I don't know. I don't. I'm gonna look
No,
for it.
I'll have to ask J-Jax because maybe even he can do a reading of it because I know sometimes he does that, right?
Yeah.
There's another book too that I bought that I liked reading of, which is it's directly involving let me get it. Brendan's case in the false confessions. It's called The Anatomy of a False Confession by Michael Cincinnati.
Yep, great book.
Interrogation and conviction of, oh, here's a sticker I have in here. That's funny. I opened it and I found a Brendan sticker. It's called The Anatomy of a False Confession, The Interrogation and Conviction of Brendan Dassey. It's another book that eventually I would like to do a reading on.
I would maybe speak to Dr. Silkman, Becca.
Oh,
I don't know if
I think
he's got
that book. So
he's got. I don't know if it's the actual book that he's got, or if he's got it on like Audible or an ebook or something like that he might be able to share with you.
Okay. Because I have the book, but I was just thinking for people online to have because I know a lot of people can't afford a $30 book. You know what I mean?
Well, we did listen to it at Foul Play, so I'm pretty sure it was J-Jax that was playing it that day. Remember, it
was one of them, Linda. Yeah, it was either Doc or J-Jax.
I thought that book was excellent.
Okay.
I liked Michael Konczynski. He's a really good guy.
He's a criminal defense lawyer on the back of this. In addition,
and he goes out and talks about what is bad about being a defense lawyer and how he got so sick of it that he just wrote books on it. And he's so honest, and it's so many things we see as lay people, he wrote down.
He was a prosecutor. I think he did both sides, Linda. Did you know he was a prosecutor and then he became a defense lawyer? So he's seen both sides of the table, and he just gave up because he didn't like what he was seeing. He didn't like what he was hearing, the way prosecutors would manipulate things and everything like that. And he goes into a lot of that in the book as well, Becca. So I mean, it's a good book to review, definitely.
Yeah, because he says it never was what he thought it was going to be. It wasn't the way he believed justice should be handled. And it's great to hear somebody that was been on both sides. I am 100% agree with Alice. It is so good to hear both sides. Somebody who's been in it, both sides, and then he writes about it, and he's very honest, really honest.
Well, and I prefer honest opinions over just people
over a sketchy book like Griesbach. Oh, he was so good. He was there and then he turns around and writes defaming books after that. Who are you going to believe, right? Somebody who flip-flops like that. Come on now. This guy's seen both sides, been on both sides. He says the justice system is just screwed, and he can't believe how some people make these plea deals. I mean, it was just, there's too much to get into, but the guy is excellent. I highly recommend it. And I don't read books, but that Audible was great. That's what it's called, right? Audible.
So, before. So, before
Thanks,
we
Becca. Thanks,
wrap this up, I just want to say thank you, Linda. Thank you, Alice. I always enjoy you guys, and I enjoy your guys' rants, even though you guys apologize. You don't have to. I just enjoy your guys' opinions. And
they're strong,
is there anything going on, Linda? Is there anything going on your channel coming up?
I think I'm not sure if I'm going to start it this week. Well, I definitely am going to be having a guest, former law enforcement, 25 years. He's now got a YouTube channel, and he's part of the real crime community. And I'm not sure what day, but I also am going to start a series on Amber Alerts. So, and I'm not quite sure if that's this week or next week, but it very soon. So just, I'll let you know.
All right.
Yeah.
Let us know, and we'll, if it's by next Sunday or even Friday, or let me know whenever, because I'm go live Wednesdays, Fridays, and now Sundays again.
You go in the morning on Wednesday, right?
And I'll. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
What time?
So I'll let you. I'll send you the link again.
Well, because I think Wednesday's going to be the day I'm going to do that guy, Steve. But I want to do it after yours. I'll do it after yours. So,
I try to do it right after work. So I usually go between 9 or 10 a.m. my time, which is like, what is that? Like 11, 12 o'clock your time. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll probably do mine around 2. So I'll be there. So you can send me a link. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And then Alice, what's going on your channel or Foul Play?
Foul Play, we've got open mic tonight. We're going to be doing Amy L's deposition. We're going to be going through that. My channel, I have just finished reading Scott Forbes' new book on the Luke Mitchell case. So I'm hopefully going to, fingers crossed, if things go the right way, I'm going to hopefully try and get him on the channel to talk about Luke's book. It is quite an eye-opener. The amount of people, other people that should have been suspects, major suspects, just with background information and things like that didn't get looked at in the case, who should have been looked at in the case, and a lot of them were close to the Jones family. So that's a discussion all in itself. But the one thing I did want to say is, I don't know if you have noticed or if you have been keeping up with the reviews of the musical, Ma'am the Musical, which is happening.
I haven't even seen it.
Now.
I have.
It has got
I have been.
5-star reviews across the board now. 5-star reviews, which is fantastic. There is people that have been to see it that haven't even been to see the haven't even seen
what I was going to say. I was going to say, how great that other people
there's a wee video going about it now, Linda, and it's just people in the street that I think have came out from seeing the musical, and they've grabbed them and they're like, what did you think, and things like that. And there's a young lass on there and she says, do you know, I haven't even seen the documentary, but I like this, so now I'm going to go home and I'm going to watch the documentary.
That's great.
It is opening the doors to the guys. It is spreading the word to other people that wouldn't have normally maybe watched the documentary, So, and as far as I'm aware, Diane, Little Misty, was going to see it tonight. Probably just about wrapping up now, because it's 20 to 7 here, and I know the time is 20 to 6 that it started. So they'll probably just be wrapping up about now and doing the ending. So hopefully we'll get a wee bit more information on Diane about how she enjoyed it. And the whole goal is that somebody picks it up and that Phil can travel and get the word out there. It is respectful, it is dignified, it's heartwarming, it's heartbreaking. I mean, it had me in disco in laughter. It had me in disco in tears. I mean, the bit with Brendan, because the way they do the back and forth, when he got his appeal, and then the Judge Duffin's decision that he was getting out, and then he wasn't getting out, and then he was getting out, and then he wasn't getting out. They portray that certain part fantastically, and you can feel it in your heart and your bones. It gave me goosebumps on how they did the song for it, because it would be, oh, you're getting out, so the song would be quite high, and jolly, and then it's no, you're not getting out, and it would go down a tone. It is fantastic how they have done this musical, and I can't praise it anymore. I do hope that it gets picked up.
Does it really show, I mean, because that's a whole new genre, like you said, but does it show, is it as gripping as watching the documentary? You know what I mean? Does it show that there is a false confession and wrongful conviction?
Yes,
Okay,
yes,
cool.
it goes through it all, Linda. It goes through. I mean, the way it starts off with just supposed to be like normal residents, a man of talk, you know, and them talking about their state.
You have a question here, Alice. There's a question for you. Are they streaming it anywhere she needs to see it?
No, not as far as I'm aware. It's not being streamed anywhere at the moment. I know they have an Instagram page. So it's Ma'am the Musical, Making a Murderer the Musical. They do have an Instagram page, and I know that they've been putting up like little clips backstage, some of the rehearsals, like practicing the songs that they've been doing, and the ones that I've seen, they still give me goosebumps to this day. Hearing the songs again, it really does. And I mean, that's how effective it is, Linda. And it goes through all the points. It goes through about when Stephen first gets out, and how he talks to Brendan, being like, "My God,
been great if they would have used." Don't you think? Don't you think it'd been great if they would have used Stacy's songs for that?
Yeah.
So my understanding is that this festival, they condense the original play is like 2 hours long, but they condensed it down to only an hour long because of the festival's limitations and all that. If it gets picked up, which we're all hoping it does, then it'll go on the road, and then that's when you'll see the full musical in its entirety.
That would be great. And if it's
at that point, you'll probably start to see streamings or some sort of a recording or something like that.
Yeah. So right now it's only available in the UK, correct?
It's only available at this festival. It's
only available. That's right, Becca. It's only available at the festival. The Edinburgh the Edinburgh Fringe Festival is one of the biggest festivals in the world for artists. Artists come from all over the world, from every continent that you can think of. Artists come to perform at this festival because it can either make you or break you at this festival.
Yeah.
You know.
So it's like our festival. We got two same thing.
The fact that it's doing so well right now and getting 5-star reviews means that it will probably be picked up and they will probably be going on the road with it.
That'd be so great. Thanks for telling us that, Alice. I didn't know nothing about it.
It's not a guarantee, Becca, even though it's got
not a guarantee.
It's not
a guarantee. But I hope it does.
Yeah. So they are.
The rave of it in Minnesota makes them, they're going to pick it up because of what it did. I mean, not in Minnesota, in the United States, what Making a Murderer has done to the United States and Netflix doing it. Believe me, somebody's going to pick that up out here.
I hope so. I really hope so. Just for the effort that Phil Neely and that have put in. I mean, the cast and the crew as well have been fantastic. I mean, if you'd like, Becca, I can send you a link to the photographs that I took of the festival at the festival,
sure.
And in there as well as it's only a 5-minute interview that I did with Phil and the boy who played Brendan. I can send that and you can show it on the channel if you'd like.
Sure, absolutely.
Oh, cool.
And you can maybe send some photos of that to Brendan. But it's getting 5-star reviews. It's only got a couple of nights left. I think, what are we on, the 28th? Yeah, the 28th. So it's only got one night left after tonight.
Maggie goes, yes, please, yes.
I will say the link I posted in the chat a little bit ago. I posted the Foul Play YouTube channel. That's where Alice is part of Team Foul Play. They did do a really good review on the play, Alice and Disco. So if you guys want to click that link to Foul Play, you can find the review they did on the play. And they also did an interview with Phil Neely, who actually wrote the play and who stars in it too. All really great stuff.
Yeah, he's a BAFTA award-winning comedian. here in the UK, and the BAFTA is the British Film and TV Awards. So it's kind of like your Globes or your Oscars, you know, here in the UK. And he's won it for writing comedy series and everything like that. And I think that's why a lot of people were like, "Oh my God, a musical! You know, how disrespectful!" You know, don't knock it until you have seen it. That's all I can say. You know,
I agree.
Because the way they've done it is absolutely fantastic.
Well, just because we don't see a vision.
Main points of Stephen getting out in 2003, and then Teresa being murdered, Brendan being arrested, coerced, backwards and forwards with his appeals, everything like that, and right up until the present day. And the proceeds that they make from it is going to go to the Innocence Project in whatever country they are in. So here in the UK, the proceeds and everything like that from merchandise is going to go to our Innocence Project. If it goes to Wisconsin or anywhere in America, it'll go to their Innocence Project.
Oh, what a wonderful thing.
Yeah.
Listen, just because I couldn't see it as a musical doesn't mean it isn't a good one. You know what I mean?
Right.
I just couldn't see. I'm like, how can they put that in a musical? But there are people out there that have visions. You know, that's why they're called creators and artists, and they're good at what they do. Right. So, yeah.
Right. Well, and I also want to say that I did find a bunch of pictures online that they posted, and I found the actors and pictures of them, and I wrote, you know, who played who. And I did send that to Brendan, and I also sent him a really good review that was done on it, showing. I thought it was an honest review, but it basically was this is a really good musical. That's, you know, same thing Alice said, that's done respectfully, blah blah blah. And I asked Brendan, you know, after he got all that, and I asked him, you know, what did you think about what I sent you? And he said he really liked it. So
let's just say this: I still can't get out of my head. Alice and Disco going, that must have been a fucking fun time.
I know, right?
I would have loved to be there.
Right? And that's the other thing I want to say is that when Alice and Disco announced that they were going to go, I sent Alice and Disco 2 PDFs for the flyers for both Stephen and Brendan. And then Rhonda sent them a bunch of postcards. So while they were there, they handed out flyers and postcards. And they talked to people, and they gave websites and YouTube channels, and they were there kind of as ambassadors for this research community. And I also want to say that Diane and Paul Capaldi, I think, is also going. You know, I sent Diane the same stuff.
Wow.
Yeah. So we have great supporters who are very knowledgeable going to this musical, who are going to reach to people who have never seen Making a Murderer or know very little about it, and giving them all these great resources on how they can help Brendan. And then you've got the musical itself, who's
a win.
Who's advertising for the Innocent Project and all that. I think this is just like a great way to reach new people and to help Brendan and his fight.
Get story out there. And
yeah.
And thank you for doing that, Alice and Disco. If you're listening, thank you, love.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's our pleasure. I mean, the first thing I did was I went and seen the musical, came out, and there was a queue outside. But they were waiting to go in and see what was on after. And I just asked them politely, have you seen Making a Murderer? No. Yes. Well, can I give you some information? These are a couple of leaflets that gives you more information on Stephen. Brendan was a 16-year-old kid who was coerced. This one's all about him. There's websites at the bottom. Brendan Talks is run by a young lass called Becca. Says she is involved in it from the beginning. She talks to Brendan. She calls Brendan. He puts his input into her channel and things like that, and then I would go on to Stephen's one, and then I would talk about the Foul Play website. So it was a mix and mash of everything between the Facebook group, the YouTube channels, things like that. And some of them were like, yeah, I seen it when it first came out. And I was like, well, can I hand you these? And they were like, yeah, yeah. And they took them, which was a good thing. I mean, some people go, nah, I'm not interested, you know. But the people with me and Disco approach, I mean, even sitting in the pub afterwards at 10 o'clock at night, they're like, so what, did you go and see any shows at the festival? Yes, Making a Murderer. Go and see it. Here, there's some leaflets. Here, there's a postcard. So sometimes we didn't even get a choice, you know. I was like, here, take some of that, take some of that. And Disco was coming back the week after we had went. So what leaflets and that I had left, I gave to Disco, and then she handed them out when she came the next again week. So it's definitely been boosted, it's definitely been talked about, and it's definitely getting the information out there.
Yes, thank you so much. That's what you want. You want everybody and their mother. We want everybody's eyes to know, everybody's ears to know this story. That is what is very important. Thank you so much for doing that.
No, it's my pleasure. Absolutely.
We would have did the same, right?
I can't do much to help the boys or anything like that, but
that's
the more I can, the more I can.
Don't cut yourself low there. That's a lot.
Well, I was going to say, you know, everyone's. Some people are knocking this musical down, but you know, people like Alice and Disco who are actually going there and handing out pamphlets and stuff, and actually that's actually making a difference. So
it is.
I'm very happy and proud of that they even went.
Thank you. I'm very thankful.
Gave it a chance, even because a lot of people weren't really to give it a chance. So I think if even if the play was awful and tanked and was terrible, you still showed up and gave out pamphlets and tried to educate the people.
You still supported the guys.
Yeah. So that's
I mean, be sure that if me and Disco didn't think that musical was up to par,
you tell us.
Happened before.
She would have probably in the middle. She probably would have stood up in the middle of it and be like, "This is bullshit."
This is bullets.
Exactly. You know, in the interview that I did with Phil at the end, and that he would have got told then, look, what you said to your here and here is a load of bollocks. You know what I mean? But it wasn't like that at all. It was absolutely fantastic. It was done respectful to all the victims, Brendan, Stephen, and
actually done, right? You would have told them this is not true. This did not happen, right? You know? Yeah. Thank you.
So the reviews that we have done are true to the fact of what went on in the musical, and how it's been portrayed and how it's been written and put across, and it is absolutely fantastic how Phil and the cast and crew have brought this story to life in a musical. It is brilliant.
Great. I love hearing that. That's good.
So I'm gonna end this. So thank you, ladies.
End this. I'm tired. No.
Well, I have to get ready for work here soon.
I got to go eat some lunch or something. I haven't eaten yet, and I've been up since 5. So.
Oh wow!
It's been great, Alice. We'll see you next Sunday.
Yes, I shall be here. I'm so glad this is back.
I know. I'm so glad too. I love when all three of us get on here and start talking about things. So,
and just to let everybody know, this is an open panel. So next Sunday, if you want to jump up here and join in on the conversation, you're more than welcome to. But thank you, everybody, for being in chat. Thank you, Alice and Linda, for being on panel. And
thank you, Becca.
I hope everyone has a really great Sunday, and hopefully I'll see you. Yeah, and remember, Foul Play is doing a live later today, so I'll be seeing you guys in the chat there. All right.
Thanks, Becca.
Thank you.
It means everything, you know, to have a family that loves and supports me no matter what, and they always have my back, you know.
Yeah, and it really is heartening to know that so many people care and still care. And what would you tell people that want to get involved, that have seen your story, who didn't really have any idea of what goes on in our justice system, but now they do? Is there anything particular that you could advise someone?
Just keep fighting for me and keep showing your love and support.